They said she wasn't the one who served, just a woman clinging to someone else's story, just a wife with a faded jacket and too many excuses. That's what the PTA president muttered as the auditorium lights dimmed and the sound of the microphone crackled to life, her voice smug behind a clipboard and a plastic smile. She didn't know Elena Reyes had ironed that jacket for 15 years straight, each time with trembling hands and a prayer for her husband to come home alive. She didn't know that the boy walking beside her, 11-year-old Gabriel with quiet eyes and a folder clutched to his chest, had watched his father leave more times than birthdays celebrated. That morning, as they took their seats in the back row of the school auditorium, beneath a banner reading Veterans Appreciation Week, someone asked if she was lost. Someone else joked that she probably just liked wearing camo because it made her look thinner. And in that moment, Gabriel heard everything, but said nothing. Because like his father had taught him, silence wasn't weakness, it was observation. If you agree that the quiet ones often carry the heaviest burdens, like and subscribe, because this story isn't about grand parades or loud medals. It's about the people we overlook until they make us remember. The Reyes family had moved to this small town barely a year ago, trying to build something steady while Gabriel's father, Master Sergeant Luis Reyes, served his final deployment. Elena had tried to fit in, volunteered at bake sales, helped decorate classrooms, even offered to translate flyers for Spanish-speaking families, but none of it seemed to matter when she showed up wearing that military spouse windbreaker and sat alone at meetings. The school was all smiling faces and coffee chatter, until she walked in. That morning's PTA session was no different. They were planning Friday's Veterans Assembly, and someone joked that the kids should be told not to clap too hard, in case the old guys drop their dentures. Another added that maybe next year they should just show a YouTube video instead of inviting men who just sat at a desk during war. Elena didn't speak, she never did, but her hand found Gabriel's under the table, squeezing it tight. He squeezed back. The principal stood at the podium, flanked by PTA members in pastel sweaters and high heels, reading out the student speakers for Friday's assembly. When Gabriel's name was called, a few eyebrows raised. "That's the new kid, right? The one with the military mom," someone whispered. "No, wife, not mom. She just wears that jacket like it's her personality." There was a pause, then laughter. Gabriel heard it all. The next day, he came home from school, dropped his backpack, and went straight to his room. He pulled out the folder where he kept his dad's letters, each one dated from a different part of the world, folded with care and sealed with strength. He read the one that started, "To the man of the house," and read it out loud, his voice shaking. Elena stood outside the door, hand over her mouth. That night, he asked her, "Is it okay if I tell the truth? Not the one they want to hear, but the one we actually live with." Elena didn't answer at first. She walked to the living room, pulled down the old storage box from the hallway shelf, the one they never opened in front of anyone. Inside, folded in perfect lines, was the flag from her father's funeral. Next to it, Luis's first deployment photo. Gabriel took it gently. "Then you'll need this," she said, handing him the laminated page that listed every rank, every operation, every commendation his father had received. "They can mock the jacket," she whispered, "but they won't forget the name." That night, Gabriel stayed up past bedtime, scribbling notes under the lamplight, piecing together the words that might make them see what they refused to hear. Outside, the wind rattled the flag on their porch. Inside, a boy wrote about the cost of service, not just in combat, but in what families carried in silence. And as the clock ticked toward midnight, Elena stood in the hallway, watching her son speak softly to an empty room, rehearsing the speech that would echo long after the last PTA smirk had faded. The cafeteria-turned auditorium smelled faintly of hand sanitizer and reheated pizza, but that morning, it held the weight of something much heavier. Folding chairs scraped against the tile as parents and students filed in, the banner above the stage fluttering slightly from the breeze of a nearby oscillating fan. Veterans Appreciation Week, honoring those who serve. A few veterans in stiff uniforms sat in the front row, their hands folded, their shoulders instinctively squared despite years out of the field. At the far end of the second row sat Elena Reyes, her windbreakers zipped halfway, posture composed but strained. Her son Gabriel sat 2 rows behind her with the other student speakers, holding his folder like it was something sacred, like it might come alive if he dropped it. On stage, the PTA president took the mic, her voice as polished as her pearls, listing off names and titles with the well-practiced cadence of someone used to applause. "And now, for a few words from our very own 5th grader, Gabriel Reyes, who has prepared a tribute to his father and the brave families who served beside them. There wasn't much reaction. A few claps. One audible sigh. Someone muttered, "Here we go again." But Gabriel stood slowly, walked with careful steps to the wooden podium, adjusted the mic the way his dad had taught him on video chat last month, and unfolded the first page. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just looked out at the room, at the students slouched in metal chairs, at the parents scrolling on their phones, at the principal pretending not to watch the PTA president for cues. And then, in a voice not loud, not trembling, but clear, Gabriel began. "My dad says real strength isn't about lifting the heaviest weight. It's about carrying something when no one helps you, and still not dropping it." He glanced up. A few kids shifted in their chairs. He continued, "My dad is Master Sergeant Luis Reyes. He's missed 4 birthdays, 2 Thanksgivings, 1 school play I didn't tell him about because I forgot my lines." Laughter stirred, half-hearted, unsure. "He's not home today," Gabriel said, more softly now. "But he calls every weekend, unless he's somewhere that doesn't have towers, which is a lot of somewheres." Gabriel turned the page. "But this isn't just about him. It's about my mom. Because while he's overseas, she's over here, doing every single thing with half her heart missing." Someone in the crowd stopped scrolling. "She doesn't wear a uniform. She doesn't get medals. But she has held down everything he had to leave behind. She's never called it sacrifice. But it is." Now the laughter stopped completely. "She makes French toast, even when there's no syrup. She tells me, 'Be strong for him,' even when I hear her crying in the laundry room. She comes to PTA meetings and gets asked if she's lost. They laugh at her jacket like it's a costume. But I know what it is." He held up a small laminated photo, his father in desert fatigues, smiling beside a tan Humvee. "This is the man who taught me that silence is strength, that respect is given to those who keep showing up, and that people will always underestimate quiet things, until the day they can't." Gabriel breathed, steady now. "So today I want to thank my dad for being brave overseas. But I want to thank my mom for being brave here, for showing up when she wasn't welcomed, for smiling through small insults, for standing tall when they made her feel invisible." His voice grew firmer. "If you've ever rolled your eyes at a military spouse, or joked about what they wear, or asked why they act like they serve too, maybe this week is the right time to stop." There was no mistaking it now. Silence had taken hold. Not the awkward kind, but the listening kind. Gabriel turned to the final page. "This is what I wrote to my dad last week. I didn't send it yet, but maybe I will now." He unfolded a second letter, carefully handwritten in blue ink. "Dear Dad, they don't all understand what you do. Some forget. Some laugh. But I don't. I see you every time I tie my shoes tight like you showed me. Every time I open the door for Mom. Every time I try again when I want to give up. I see you, even when I can't see you. Love, Gabriel." He looked up. "And I hope today maybe they see you too." He closed the folder, stepped back from the mic, and nodded. The silence lingered, then broke not with applause at first, but with stillness. A shared moment where eyes glanced at one another, as if trying to silently agree on something no one wanted to admit out loud. Then slowly, first from the veterans in the front row, then a teacher near the wall, then a PTA dad standing in the back, the room stood up. One by one. Not a cheer, not a roar. Just the sound of metal chairs scraping across tile as people rose to their feet. Some clapped. Some didn't. Some just stood, arms crossed, faces softened by shame. In the front row, one older man with silver hair wiped his eye with his sleeve. Gabriel didn't smile. He just walked back to his chair beside the other students and sat down, folder still tight in his hands. From her seat in the second row, Elena stared forward, jaw locked, blinking fast. One of the PTA mothers beside her, one who hadn't spoken to her all year, reached over and touched her arm gently. "He's got his father's spine," she whispered. Elena finally smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile you wear. It was the kind that slips out when dignity is finally seen. After the assembly, the principal took the mic again, clearing her throat awkwardly. "Let's take a moment to thank all the families who serve and continue to serve, right here among us." She looked at Elena. "We're proud you're part of this community." Some clapped again, less performative this time. A few of the students who had laughed earlier now looked down at their shoes. As the crowd dispersed, the PTA president walked briskly to Elena, flustered. "We should have included you more this week," she mumbled. "Maybe next year." You can help organize the event? Elena didn't answer right away. She glanced at Gabriel, who was now surrounded by two classmates asking if he could sit with them at lunch. Next year, she said slowly, we might be busy. My husband's coming home. The woman nodded, cheeks coloring. Elena turned to leave. As they walked out into the parking lot, the morning sun finally warming the pavement, Gabriel looked up at his mom. Do you think he'll hear about it? He asked. Elena paused, then nodded. He already has. You made sure of it. And somewhere, half a world away, in a tent lit by a flickering fluorescent bulb, Master Sergeant Luis Reyes stared at a grainy video clip playing on a military-issue laptop, the one sent by a teacher who had filmed the whole thing, saying only, "You should be proud." He changed the room, and Luis didn't say a word. He just placed his hand gently over the keyboard, closed his eyes, and whispered, "Mission accomplished." The clip of Gabriel's speech didn't trend, didn't go viral, didn't make headlines, and somehow, that made it mean more. It stayed quiet, passed from inbox to inbox, from teacher to parent, from coach to counselor, like a whisper that carried weight. In the weeks that followed, subtle things began to shift. The smirks stopped first, then the side-eye glances, then the jokes. One morning, a new flyer appeared on the school's bulletin board, Military Families Meetup, posted by Elena Reyes. No one laughed. 2 moms showed up the first week, 7 the second. A month later, Elena was asked to co-chair next year's Veterans Assembly, not out of guilt, but respect. Gabriel, meanwhile, didn't mention the speech again. He still wore sneakers with untied laces, still forgot his lunchbox every other Friday, still asked if pizza night could be moved to Thursdays. But something in him stood straighter, as if carrying something no one else could quite name. At recess, when 2 kids argued about who got to lead the kickball game, one of them said, "Let Gabe decide. His dad's a real-life commander." The other kid nodded. "Yeah, and his mom's tougher than the lunch lady." Gabriel didn't brag. He just smiled, like someone who had already seen the end of the story while others were still stuck in the middle. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in March, it happened. Elena got the call just after breakfast. Her hand flew to her mouth before she even said hello. Gabriel was already packing his school bag, but when he saw her eyes, he dropped it. "Is it Dad?" he asked, breath caught between hope and habit. She nodded slowly. "He's coming home. This Friday." That week passed and fast forward. The house was cleaned 3 times. The flag on the porch was re-ironed and rehung. Gabriel tried to wear a tie to school on Thursday, just to see what it felt like. Friday came, and so did the rain. Gray sheets poured across the school roof as families huddled under umbrellas for afternoon pickup. But Gabriel wasn't in the car line. He stood by the flagpole with Principal Harris and 4 teachers, fidgeting with the corner of a small welcome sign made from red construction paper. Then the SUV pulled up, dark green, mud-caked tires, government plates. And the door opened. The man who stepped out wasn't tall by movie standards, wasn't polished like the heroes on recruiting posters. But he walked with a calm that quieted the air around him. Master Sergeant Luis Reyes wore his dress blues like they were stitched from memory, every ribbon aligned, every boot laced with care. His beard was grayer than before, his shoulders broader, his eyes rimmed with miles. But when he saw his son, everything else disappeared. Gabriel didn't run, he marched. Not stiffly, not theatrically, but with purpose. His sneakers squeaked on the wet sidewalk, water splashing around his ankles, but he didn't care. He walked right up to his father, lifted his chin, and saluted. No one had taught him how to do it exactly right, but somehow it was perfect. Luis returned it without hesitation, sharply, cleanly. Then he dropped to one knee, pulled Gabriel into the kind of hug that rewrites bones, and whispered, "Heard you've been holding the line, soldier." Gabriel nodded into his father's neck. "Yes, sir." Behind them, umbrellas were lowered. Phones came out, but no one shouted, no one cheered. They just watched, as if realizing too late they were standing in the presence of something sacred. Elena stepped forward, still frozen in disbelief, and Luis opened one arm to her. She hesitated for just a breath, then broke into a run. When she reached him, it wasn't a kiss that followed. It was forehead to forehead, eyes closed, hands gripping the sides of his uniform like proof that he was finally real again. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. That night, the Reyes home filled with casserole dishes and handmade signs and paper flags from neighbors who meant to say something sooner. Luis shook every hand. Gabriel sat on the couch and told his dad everything: the assembly, the jokes, the letter, the way the room had gone silent. And Luis didn't say much at first. He just listened, his eyes never leaving his son's face. Then he opened his duffel bag and pulled something out, a small, wooden plaque, carved by a local artisan from a base overseas. It read, "For holding the line in my absence." And below that, "To Gabriel, from Dad." Gabriel touched the engraving, then held it like it was too heavy to lift with one hand. "Can I take this to school?" he asked. Luis smiled. "You better." The following Monday, Luis Reyes visited Gabriel's school not as a surprise, but as a guest. He was invited by the staff to speak to students during their weekly character assembly. This time, when he walked in, there were no raised eyebrows, no muttered comments, no sideways glances at Elena's jacket. The whole auditorium stood up before anyone even asked them to. Luis didn't speak for long. He kept his words simple, grounded, and direct, just like Gabriel had done. Service, he said, isn't just boots on sand. It's standing up for what's right when it's hard. It's raising your voice when someone else gets laughed at. It's holding the line at home. He turned and gestured toward Gabriel, sitting in the front row with his hands folded tight in his lap. "I served 20 years, Luis said, "but I've never seen a braver act than the day my son stood in front of strangers and reminded them what respect looks like." The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was steady, long, and when it finally faded, Principal Harris stepped to the mic and cleared his throat. "We've been talking a lot about what legacy means," he said. "And we've realized that sometimes you don't need to be a grown-up to start one." He turned to Gabriel. "From today on, this school will observe Gabriel Reyes Day every November 10th, the day before Veterans Day. A reminder that respect begins before the uniform is ever worn." Gabriel didn't stand up. He just looked at his parents. And they looked back, three souls tied together by distance, sacrifice, and a truth finally heard. That spring, Elena received an envelope in the mail from the county. Inside was a certificate of recognition signed by the school board for exemplary civic engagement and advocacy for military families. At the bottom, written in blue ink, was a note: "You were right to wear the jacket. Keep wearing it." Gabriel framed it for her birthday. And every year after that, on November 10th, the school held a quiet ceremony, not with fireworks or pageants, but with stories. Stories written by kids who interviewed their parents, their uncles, their grandparents. Stories that reminded everyone that service wears many faces, some of them still waiting at the kitchen table. And in the library, next to the plaque with Gabriel's name, sits a small notebook. Inside it, his original speech, printed in his own handwriting. Below that, a single typed line from the principal: "Dignity isn't given. It's remembered." They say some speeches are heard. Some are shared. But a few, just a few, become scripture. And Gabriel's? That one taught a whole town how to see again. Not through noise, but through the silence that follows truth. The kind of silence that stands, quietly, as the loudest salute.